We are about to get into our fourth plenary discussion of the day. This one's a little more technical. The title of the plenary is to review SDG indicators, methodologies for measurement, baselines and targets. And to make sense of that, we're honoured to have Stephen Rudgard, who's the country representative of Indonesia, Timor, Leste for UN FAO, come back to the stage, invite his fellow panellists up and moderate this, what I'm sure will be an insightful session. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Am I on? Yes.
You're on.
Thank you very much, Tony. So we're in what I used to call the graveyard slot. After lunch, you've all had a nice lunch. You're well provisioned, and our job is to keep you awake for the next half hour. And luckily, I've got two people who are going to come and help me do that. One of whom is Jarot Indarto from BAPPENAS. He's the Deputy Director of the Food and Agriculture. Pat, if you could join us here. A slight change to the program here. And the other colleague that's going to join me is Jitendra Tomar from our regional office. He's a senior statistician who's working normally with the government of India, but is on secondment to FAO in our regional office. Please. Now, if you had to pick a subject to try and keep people awake after lunch, you might not choose SDG indicators. I'll be totally honest with you. So we've got to try and introduce the humor element to this. Could be a bit of a challenge, but we'll have a go. Essentially what this session was to try and set the context for what we've been discussing this morning is all very well. What we will be discussing in terms of the action plan tracks. But actually, what are you measuring? What are you trying to quantify when you talk about SDG2? When you talk about food security and nutrition and zero hunger, what are the measurements that you're taking? Because those essentially reflect the changes that we're trying to achieve. And as with all the SDG frameworks, there was a lot of discussion at global level to try and determine which indicators would be good for monitoring the situation. Now, that's at the global level. We then have a context that every country has the option to either take those indicators as projected at global level, or to what we call to localize them, to adapt them to the national context. The SDG framework is a voluntary framework. There's no requirement on member states, member countries, from the United Nations perspective, that every government has to adopt all of the indicators. And it's a general conversation that has been led by BAPPENAS here in Indonesia, with the strong support of the National Bureau of Statistics, BPS, that is the holder of the data. So what we thought we would do for this session was to ask Jitendra, who has, as I said, his national background from the Indonesian Statistics Service, but is, luckily for us, with us in Bangkok, to give us a quick run through what are the indicators at the global level that people have chosen. Now, we apologize in advance because this may all be old news to some of you in the room, but I think it's important, we thought it was important to get everyone to the same level of understanding before we go into the working groups. Yeah. Jitendra, so I pass to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, and Assalamu alaikum. As Stephen mentioned, I am working with the regional office FAO Bangkok, and basically on secondment from Government of India. And since 2017, and before working on SDG, I was working for global project, particularly for Asia component, improving the agriculture and rural statistics, where I did lots of capacity development in the member countries for cost-effective methodologies. and now working for the SDGs. And I worked in Government of India more than 10 years, different capacities and ministries, including Planning Commission, like here BAPPENAS, and worked for last economic census, and I was the one of the trainer of National Academy. So topic is little bit technical. I want to focus on measurement. So let me allow to use the PowerPoint. May I have PowerPoint, please?
Technical detail. It's there.
Okay.
It's on the side screens.
Yeah.
So you can't see it.
It's okay. Basically, eradicate hunger or zero hunger, SDG2 related to zero hunger. And this goal is end hunger and achieve food security, and including improve the nutrition and sustainability. And you know, this is the one of the center pillar of 2030 agenda. If we are not able to achieve this SDG goal 2, we are not able to achieve the SDG 17 goals of 2030 agenda. And I am happy here because this forum chose very correctly for National Action Plan for SDG 2. And SDG now required the lots of data. And like Stephen mentioned, global indicator framework as well as national indicator framework should be aligned 1-to-1. Then only countries are able to collect the data. So I am going to focus particularly SDG2 indicators under FAO custodianship, and two more important indicators under UNICEF and WHO custodianship. And you know that out of 21 indicators under FAO custodianship, 9 are under SDG2. And all these 9 indicators start from food access to productivity and income of small scale holders, as well as agriculture sustainability and biodiversity and public investment in agriculture and food price. So these are the very important. And here you can look this scenario on the date 2015. Most of the indicators out of these under tier 3. It means there was no methodology. But now I am happy to inform that all of the 21 indicators under FAO custodianship are either in tier 1 or tier 2. And under SDG 2, you can see green lights. Most of the indicator have the established international agreed methodology, as well as most of the countries adopted or localized these indicators and collecting the data. So this is little bit background about all indicators. Let me go through quickly one by one. And this 2.1.1, this is prevalence of undernourishment, or you can say hunger. And this is tier 1, and this indicator was part of MDG as well. So most of the participants, even national governments, are well versed with these indicators. And this is basically estimate of proportion of the population who are not able to consume the food which is required for active and healthy life. And this PAU measurement, basically food deprivation, and sources of data for this indicator calculation comes from intake survey, household income and expenditure survey, and at global level, food balance sheet, as well as demographic data of the national populations. And to calculate these indicators, we require 3 parameters, basic 3 parameters. One is average dietary energy consumption, other is what is the inequality within a population, and what are the minimum requirement of the population. And this source of data, almost every country, including Indonesia, conducting the household income and expenditure survey, as well as demographic data is available. That's why Indonesia already adopted this indicator in their SDG roadmap. And Statistic Indonesia, BPS, is the focal point. And as on today, on the basis of 3-year average, worldwide, PAU is 10.7%. You are very well aware. And Indonesia situation is 8.3%. And particularly in Asia Pacific region, almost 73% countries are reporting the data to global database. So this is well adopted indicator. One more indicator related to food access is prevalence of moderate or severe food insecurity in the population on the basis of food insecurity experience scale. Both these two indicators are complementary to each other, and they are calculating the food access dimension of food security. Methodology is different, data sources are different. PAU based on the indirect data, household data, FIS based on the direct interview of individuals, individuals' experience on the basis of 8-question module developed by the FAO and standard scale also developed by the FAO. And moderate level means people are not able to quality food or quality diet. And severe means they are not able to eat proper food or proper quantity diet. So in particularly Indonesia, figure is 8.1%, moderate or severe food insecurity. And in the region, almost 27% countries are reporting this indicator. So these two indicators already adopted by BAPPENAS. And third one is 2.1, very much relevant for the Indonesia, prevalence of stunting. And stunting, you know, this is impaired linear growth, means height for age value is below -2 standard deviation from the WHO medium standards. And this stunting, basically children under 5 and particularly under 2-year age, they are either too short as per the he or her age, his or her age. And data source is mostly nutritional survey, which is available for Indonesia, and international agencies also supporting like multiple indicators, cluster survey, demographic and health survey. So data is available, and Indonesia particularly situation is little bit above the world average. Standing is 30.8%, world average is 21.9%. Prevalence of malnutrition, this covered two parts. One is wasting and other is overweight. And both these wasting and overweight situation also little bit alarming as compared to world average. In Indonesia, as per 2018 figures, 10.2% children are wasted and overweight around 8%. Now, I like to focus some of the indicators which are not part of the Indonesia SDG roadmap and which need to be aligned or adopted for the data collection, because SDG2 covers many aspects of to achieve the zero hunger. So one of the indicator, this is productivity and income of the small scale holders. So really need to define small scale food producers, because worldwide there was no internationally accepted definition. Different countries have their own definition. Now this definition is adopted and internationally agreed by the all member countries. Lowest 40% of cumulative distribution on the basis of land size, livestock head and income. If any farmer or food producer belong to this category, that called a small scale holders. And this productivity and income is really required to assess the progress of small scale holders or food producers in terms of productivity and income. Indonesia aligned this indicator, but not such as it is. They use proxy indicator, agriculture value added per worker. That is the proxy of this indicator. 2.4 point is most important. This is related to proportion of agriculture area under productive and sustainable agriculture, because whole SDG center is sustainability, and this sustainability indicator covers multiple dimensions of sustainability, from land productivity to profitability, land tenure, many aspects. Almost 11 sub indicators are the part of 2.4.1, and data collection is required at the firm level, and FAO developed one particular questionnaire to cover all aspects of data to compile these indicators. However, Indonesia SDG roadmap not align this indicator. Same related to biodiversity, number of plant genetic resources for food and agriculture, as well as number of animal genetic resources. And this is biodiversity is very much relevant due to climate change and demand of food and different preferences. And data source is FAO, World Information and Early Warning System for Plant Genetic Resources. 39% countries in the region are reporting this indicator, and for animal, FAO have the domestic animal diversity information system. And this database are, you can say, indirect measurement of total genetic diversity. And here in Indonesia, focal points are there, but SDGs are not localized yet. And second last important is the Agriculture Orientation Index for Government Expenditure. Here you can say this AOI, Agriculture Orientation Index, is agriculture share of government expenditure divided by agriculture contribution in GDP. And here in Indonesia, almost more than 30% agriculture share in GDP. So AOI, Agriculture Orientation Index, gives the sense of central government commitment to agriculture relative to sector's economic commitment. And as we discussed since the morning, investing in agriculture is one of the most effective strategy for reducing the poverty and achieving the zero hunger and promoting the sustainability. And data source depend on the country, maybe Ministry of Finance or Planning Agency or NSOs for this indicator compilation. 59% countries in the region are reporting this indicator. However, Indonesia not yet localized these indicators. So last one is indicator of food price anomalies. Price volatility is very important to for consumer point of view as well as producer point of view. And this indicator measure the food price volatility. And there are in this indicator based on the compound growth rate. And calculation is very easy, depend on the CPI data available at the national level. And this indicator have three threshold. If this indicator value is less than 0.5, it means normal, no price volatility or abnormal changes. If between 0.5 to 0.1, then high, little moderate high, and if more than 1, then high. Need to take policy intervention to reduce the price or stabilize the price. So this indicator is also not part of the Indonesia SDG roadmap. So overall, I want to say all these SDG2 indicators, 9 is under FAO custodianship. Country need to localize, because to achieve the zero hunger, country need to take a holistic approach from food access to biodiversity to price control and all aspect. And here agriculture cover all subsector of agriculture, starting from crop, livestock, fishery and forestry. So FAO being a custodian agency offering the support, because you know SDGs are led by the national government. National governments, our member countries are signatory of the SDGs. We, FAO, like custodian agency, are only observer. We can provide the technical assistance, capacity development to localize all the indicators. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jitendra. So if you wanted to know what the 10-minute drive through the SDG2 indicators was, Jitendra has just done it for you. I'm sure you're all able to recite that now, having seen that slide deck at least once. I would like to pass the word to Pak Jarot to give us a little snapshot as to how government of Indonesia and BAPPENAS in particular took this array of indicators. How did you nationalize them and put them into the national context, Pak? If you could just give us a brief description. And we have about 10 minutes, Pak, if that's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jarot Indarto. I am working at BAPPENAS as Deputy Director for Food under Directorate of Food and Agriculture. So in the context of SDGs, we are National Coordinator for SDGs Goal 2, as we discussed today. And in terms of the indicator and the metrics of SDGs 2, actually we are working closely together with SDG2 custodian like FAO and also other development partners, discussing and also developing the methodology and data. I mean the methodology we would like to adopt as much as we can in national development planning. And if you look at the draft of our next 5 years development planning, we are highly trying to adopt the indicators of SDG 2. For example, in the food security national priority, you may see in the draft of RPGMN that like POU, VS, and also income of farmers, we adopt that indicators already. Although we also realize that some indicators, as mentioned by our colleague, has not been adopted yet, but still we very high commitment to adopt that one. The problem of adoption is not only that whether the data is available now, but whether we can provide the data in routine way. So what we are doing from the government side is we working with BPS, the Statistical Bureau, to add the specific variable consistent with SDGs indicator to be measured in the routine survey activities. So, for example, POU and VS, we can provide the data in 2011, Pak, for POU. For VS, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So we ask BPS to add that variable, not in the different survey, but in the routine survey. That is what we are doing as the government, and we are very happy that in terms of VS indicator, for example, we are, I mean, Indonesia is a pioneer on that one compared to other countries. Another one is, if we look at also the state of food and agriculture report this year, published by FAO, the trend of POU VS at global and regional level, there is a trend of I mean worse. The hunger condition at global level and regional level is worsened. But in Indonesia, that number is declining. I mean, we are improving. We are improving. Although BAPPENAS is still worried about not the prevalence itself, because the number of prevalence is not so much. 8% at 2018. But what we should worry is the number of POU. So you can calculate 8% within almost 250 million among population Indonesia. So the prevalence is not so much, but number is matters. So we are still working on that one. And in the national planning, now we adopt the integrated approach as framed by Lancet framework, so that hunger, malnutrition is not a single ministry or single sector issue. That issue is solved by more integrated ministries, like hunger. Water sanitation contributes significantly to malnutrition and also hunger. So there are many activities that we have to integrate to pursue a special target on SDGs. And BAPPENAS, we commit to achieve the goal not only at national level, but we are trying to mainstream the approach and also the target into provincial and local level. So we have not only national action plan on SDGs, but we have provincial and also district action plan for SDGs.
Thank you very much, Pak Jarot. What I think you've done neatly, you've presented also the concepts of adoption in general, promoted at the global level, is the adoption should be absolutely down, straight. Take that indicator, apply it. But inevitably, with some of the less used indicators, as you rightly said, Jitendra, once you move out of the first four, which were adopted, many of them were taken forward from the NDG level, you're then into terrain which the methodologies are recent, not easily described, and present some challenges for national and local agencies to measure. What I was really interested about is we have, as of last week, a new Minister of Agriculture, took up the position, was inaugurated about 8-9 days ago. Bapak Sahrul has, in his first week, indicated that he is acknowledging the authority of the National Bureau of Statistics and their data, and that the Ministry of Agriculture will work with that as a combination. And what the minister wants is a control panel with all these data on these indicators and other national measures that are up there, so he can constantly monitor and report to the President on the status of these sorts of goals. So there's clear commitment from the government side to not only measure, but actively monitor and to actively watch the changes. There's no complacency on that. Now, I want to just maybe, I don't imagine we're going to have a long discussion about what we've presented here, but if there are any questions on points of clarification or things that people did not understand, then we'd be happy to take them now. If there's anything that would come up. Jan, do we have a microphone? There's one here. Okay. It's coming. If you could introduce, no, everybody knows who you are because you're on the panel.
Jan Nijhoff
Yep, you're on.
from the World Bank. Just a quick question. The indicator on public expenditure on, I can't remember what the phrase was, the public expenditure on agriculture.
Yeah,
Like
agriculture
at the very end.
orientation index. Agriculture orientation index.
Yeah. Of course, there needs to be some clarification around that, right? About the quality of spending. Because if you count all the agricultural expenditure, it's a lot. And that's not good enough. I just wanted to make that point.
No, I think this is a very valid point. Measuring the amount of something doesn't necessarily give you the quality. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think most people would respect that often a national government may choose to take a proxy on that sort of indicator, not necessarily measure only the amount, but look at the way that amount is attributed, central versus provincial, etc.
Yeah, and if you look at the actual indicator description online, it talks about the kinds of investment that fall under that. And just as a guide, we all know that the returns to investment on investment in research and technology development is probably 20 times that of returns to investment on a fertilizer subsidy. And that's the kind of order of magnitude we're talking about.
Thank you. And that's a sort of reality statement that I think we ought to look for. When we think about the National Action Plan, we've got to be thinking about the effectiveness of interventions. Not just can we complete them, but are they really cost effective? Are they really bringing the value that one's looking for? Any other points to be raised or any other questions? One here. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Imran from Hara. I know measurement is so bloody difficult. Like recently, Esther Duflo pointed out that SDGs on education, which measures the schooling, doesn't necessarily means that we measure learning. And we're talking about food security here. I don't know. I'm just curious whether this is important or not. I know there's a food price volatility there, but because in this country, when we talk about food security, we always talk about food sovereignty also. And in Europe right now, we're talking a lot about short supply chain, which actually also related to food security somehow. So where's the supply chain in this context? Is there any measurement related to that, or is not that important in terms of food security? Because I think that's because we only measure, because what one of the key measurement is measurement of access to food, right?
Yeah. Pat, can I just point of clarification? When you talk about the supply chain, are you talking about the inputs to the farmer or the moving of the food from the farmer to the consumer?
Moving from the farmer to the consumer mostly.
Fine.
Because we're talking about access to food.
Exactly. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
As I said, under FAO custodianship, we have the 21 indicator. I focus only SDG2 indicators. One of the indicator under goal 12, responsible consumption and production, is 12.3.1 related to index of food loss and waste. In case of loss, we cover all stages of food supply chain, starting from harvesting to up to retail level. So there we calculate different losses, and after consumer at household level, that is part of food waste. So all taking together, and as mentioned by my colleague, SDGs need the data at the disaggregate level, maybe geographically, sex-wise, gender-wise, and age-wise also are different stages. So overall, to achieve zero hunger or poverty-free world, we need to work all together.
That's a good point. I think one should recognize that SDG2 doesn't hold all of the keys to food security and nutrition, and one can also go to several of the other SDGs, as the point was made already a couple of times today. And that food chain one does take us out of the immediate domain of SDG2, but it shows the interactivity between the SDGs. It does leave us with the question, so if we only focus on SDG2, we are missing some of the game. Some of the factors that really bear on food security and nutrition. So we should bear that point in mind. Thank you for raising that, because that takes us into SDG 12, but there are others as well. SDG 14, particularly with the marine context.
Water, land, and all.
And so on.
Because resources are limited, we need to reduce the loss to make the food security.
So we're out of time. I'd like to just pay a vote of thanks to Pak Jarot, thank you so much, and to my colleague Jitendra for taking us through some basic parameters, and I'm going to hand the session back. Thank you very much.